Welcome back to Review Crew. I'm Elise.
And I'm Ellie. On today's episode, we're going to be reviewing Elvis. Gabe and Ian are going to be on the spot to review Walk the Line.
Here's the trailer for Elvis.
There are some who'd make me out to be the villain of this here story.
Let's don't let a good thing die.
Are you born with destiny? Or does it just come knocking at your door?
He's a young singer from Memphis, Tennessee. Give him a warm hayride welcome, Mr. Elvis Presley.
Get a haircut, buttercup.
In that moment, I watched that skinny boy transform into a superhero. He was my destiny. I wish to promote you, Mr. Presley. Are you ready to fly?
I'm ready. Ready to fly.
Tomorrow, all of America will be talking about Elvis Presley.
President, try not to move around so much during the tapes.
I can't move, I can't sing. Some people wanted to put me in jail the way I was moving.
They might put me in jail for walking across the street, but you're a famous white boy.
The way he sings is God-given, so there can't be nothing wrong with it.
Senator Kennedy has been shot. Martin Luther King has been shot to death in Memphis.
Tragedy, but it has nothing to do with us.
It has everything to do with us. Reverend once told me, when things are too dangerous to say, sing. I'm gonna be 40 soon, and nobody's gonna remember me. I need to get back to who I really am. And who are you, Elvis? I just gotta be making the most of this thing while I can. This could all be over in a flash.
We are the same, you and I. We are two odd, lonely children reaching for eternity. The greatest show on earth.
Elvis has left the building.
All right. So I think Elvis was like a very enjoyable movie, but it didn't exactly reinvent the wheel. It was what it was supposed to be, which was for old people.
Yeah. Also, it was a little bit too long for my taste. Edging on 3 hours, not what I want to spend my time doing. But whatever. It was mostly for old people or of an older age, 50 and above, let's say that. Because 50 is not that old. Anyway. The graphics or the CGI was not always the best, but
yeah. I also think that like the way that the movie was filmed though was very reflective of like how Elvis's life panned out. Like I feel like it was told through the Colonel's eyes, which is like kind of how his story's always been told. It's then been told how he felt and how he was feeling, but how other people wanted to use him and how they helped him.
yeah.
Do you agree?
I agree. I was also thinking, like, it shows how the Colonel was controlling Elvis for most of the time, and we could see that through the movie, but it was probably not to the same extent as it was in real life. So I thought that was a unique perspective, because if it was through Elvis's eyes, I think it probably would have looked very different.
I also was wondering, though, like, maybe the reason why they did it through the Colonel's eyes is because they thought it was going to be more entertaining. But I do think that maybe that took away from the movie, because I know that's, like, a big thing that not a lot of people enjoyed, which I think that it was kind of trying to be, like, new and edgy, and maybe it came off as corny and cheesy instead. So, I don't know what you think about that.
You could definitely tell that it was trying to, like, reinvent Elvis, or, like, reinvent, movies based off of musicians by, like, they added new artists like Doja Cat into it, and were trying to get the younger audience into it, and it didn't work out, but they tried.
There was effort put. There was effort put. But I also think that, like, I think they did a lot of good job, like, advertising it, and I feel like that because of that, like, there was a lot of interest in Austin Butler.
Yeah.
But maybe, like, and maybe there were a lot of movie sales within it, and, like, maybe it is more to our audience, but maybe they just didn't go see it in theaters. So I think that's, like, a great example of, like, how movies have changed, and I feel like this is an example of, like, them trying to merge two worlds and people with different perspectives trying to see it. But
Yeah, honestly, I think they did a really good job of casting Austin Butler, not just because, like, maybe he looks like Elvis if he had naturally black hair, but, like, Austin Butler was either on Disney or Nick, or, like, one of the, like, shows when we were younger. So I think that probably would have been a good way to, like, bring in people of our age into it. But I was not going to spend 3 hours in the movie theater. I waited until it was on a streaming service. I wasn't about to, like, pay to see that.
Very true. I also think it's interesting, though, in the movie they didn't touch upon a lot of, like, the controversial parts of Elvis. Like, the one I just know most about is Priscilla Presley. Like, they met for the first time when she was 14, and they instead glamorized her, which I think is, of course, used because there's a lot of love around her as a person. But I think it's interesting that they met when she was 14, and that was kind of glazed over as they were always in love and meant to be.
Yeah. I think people would probably try and dismiss that as it was an older time, but whatever. But also, like, the first shot we see her in is in her childhood bedroom. Like, maybe don't shoot it in the childhood bedroom if you're trying to not bring up the fact that she was a lot younger than him.
A lot. Anyway, but I do think that, like, at the same time that maybe this is, like, an example of, like, how people look at Elvis, and, like, it's, like, I'm not think how to say that. They view that as being okay because he was so glamorized and he was such a huge influence on society, which I do think is a great example of how this movie is, like they dismissed those things in the movie and they dismissed it in real life. So maybe it's a perfect reflection of it. Maybe, like, it isn't something to be criticized. So
Yeah.
this can be looked at both ways, I guess.
Well, he was also criticized a lot for, like, the way that he moved in the movie. Like, half of the plot in the beginning was he's moving, like, he's gonna get a bunch of hate, and the Colonel is trying to stop him from doing that. But, like, that just, like, I don't know.
No, I agree. I think that, like, it's also, too, I feel like for us, it's really hard to understand a world where that's a thing. So I felt like they did a really good job of bringing us into that world because, like, we'd never grown up somewhere where that is a problem.
Like, dancing, like, moving your hips is, like, not a good thing. They're like, okay, stop.
Yep.
Yeah, but even, like, it opened on The Country Singer. I think it was, like, definitely not parallel, but it was a good contrast to see, like, how the movie went from showing country singers to Elvis and, like, 200-plus pound Elvis after, but, like, him in his prime. Or actually, it opened on a flashback of him.
When he was in Kentucky,
I don't know
100% sure.
I'm
not going to commit to that.
Yeah. It was like he collapsed or something, and then, and then the dad was like, put him on. It's fine. I was like, oh, that doesn't seem great, but whatever.
But yeah. I also didn't know, like, how poor he came up from a childhood. They also, I think, they put a lot of pressure on him, and maybe that's, like, an example of, like, how artists now feel pressure today. He was the first person to have so much notoriety and fame, which I do think they pictured that a lot, and we see that a lot now because of social media and all that, but this was the first time that we saw a musician that had so much fame and power, but at the same time had none with, like, the way society treated him.
Yeah. Although I will say in the movie, like, every half an hour it felt like they were being like, we're broke. Like, we got to figure something out. You got to do this gig that you don't want to do. We're broke. And I was like, isn't he like a multi-millionaire?
Yeah.
And I have a hard time believing in real life that he controlled his own money if the Colonel was already controlling everything else.
Yeah, I don't think he controlled his own money. But I think, yeah, I wonder, like, yeah, I agree. Like, he probably did not control his own money, which I think that is something that, like, is now musicians today do. So maybe this was showing, like, the dangers of that. And, like, where people now try to improve on today. I don't know.
Because he didn't know what it was really going towards. I mean, he bought the house for his mother, but, like, and drugs.
I also think that his relationship with his mom, I knew it was a weird relationship, but I think it was a lot weirder than I originally thought, which I also think maybe explains a lot of his behaviors and explains a lot of how he is. But I feel like it was really well depicted because that was a very interesting topic, to say the least, to touch upon. And I feel like they actually did a really good job within the film of talking about his relationship and showing how traumatic it was for him. And also I feel like his going through that also shifted his music, which I feel like they pictured very well.
That's true.
Yeah, so now we're going to go to a commercial break. Thank you.
And we're back.
So I think that, like, we're going to talk about, like, the actors and, like, how we feel their different performances went. So, like, first we've talked a lot about, like, Austin Butler so far. I feel that he did do a really good job at embodying the character. And he clearly dedicated a lot of time and energy, as he has not lost that accent apparently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you haven't heard it? And, like, there's a lot of interviews of him still having that. So I do think that he's embodied the character a lot. Do I think he should win Best Actor? No.
There's been a lot better movies with better actors than Austin Butler.
Yeah, I also think that, like, this genre of film has also been over-exhausted, and I think that people also don't have as much interest in nominating people that work on the autobiography characters. But I do think that, like, he did a great job at, like, I think he's rebranded himself because of this film, and I think that has been very good for the advertising and for all that kind of thing. So I think that he did a good job with that.
Yeah, it'll definitely look good on his resume. But because I don't really know what he was, like, too well known for before this movie. I feel like he was pretty in the dark for a little while. But the other big name, Tom Hanks, which he's in a bunch of movies. He's great in a lot of them. This one,
Not
less
so
so. I mean, still great. It is Tom Hanks. He is a very skilled actor. He knows what he's doing. He knows the type of character he's going to play. But this one...
Yeah, I think that maybe there was too much creative liberty given to him, just a little bit. I think that, like, it was a great character, and I think it could have been taken in a lot of great directions, but I think that the way it was depicted was a little too fantastical, which I do think is a lot of the running issues within this movie. But I think that his character was too over the top, which made it feel unrealistic and unrelatable. It seemed like a character that would never be grounded in reality, and I think that's, like, also something that kind of took you out of the film a lot of the times. Like, his character was just so odd and weird, and
also we knew nothing about his character. Like, it even, in the last part of the movie, it, like, says his real name or something like that. But I feel like if Tom Hanks had, like, alluded to that or hinted to it just a little bit, it would have, like, during the movie when I was watching it, I was thinking a lot about that. And I feel like if he had, like, you know, like, let his accent slip or, like, responded to something, or, like, there was an old family picture or something like that, I would have been like, oh, okay, I can move on from that. Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. I think that, like, as we touched on with his character, the overall directing of this was very over the top and fantastical, which I think that, like, took you out of the films, because, like, personally, some of my favorite scenes were just him on stage performing.
Yeah.
And instead, we got a lot of CGI shots around Las Vegas, and it was just a lot. And I think that, like, this director has, like, done this a lot in his previous movie, like The Great Gatsby, which, like, is a great book, and it has great parts of its film, but one of the biggest things that is wrong with that movie is also the CGI, which I think that, I don't know what's going on there.
I think the director needs to learn how to get a better CGI guy, maybe. But yeah, I would agree with that. back to like the pictures of Las Vegas, like I saw that building too many times in that movie. Like I did not need to see it. Or like the zoom in to his room. I was like, okay, what's the point of that?
Yeah.
Like,
I think that ultimately the goal was to try to show how Elvis changed Las Vegas, and I think that could have been done very well. But I don't think that the way that it was chosen to go in was the way audience connected with a lot either. I don't think that people left the film with knowing, like, having a better understanding of how Elvis affected Las Vegas.
yeah.
Because he did. He like changed it and made it what it is today. His influence will forever be seen on Las Vegas, and I think that that's something they could have depicted really well within the film, but didn't get depicted as well as one would have hoped. But yeah. And
I
then,
would agree with that.
yeah, I also think that like a lot of the like songs in it, like of course with it being an Elvis film,
Yeah.
it's very important, and they tried, of course, to add some modern singers like Doja Cat and all that, which, you know, was
It was a decision. I don't know whether it was a good decision or a bad decision. I have no hate towards Doja Cat as of now. Like, I don't know. But I don't know if that really, like, helped. I mean, they were already good songs, so I feel like if they had just had Elvis actually, like, sing them, like, get a recording of Elvis to put it over the track, or, like, blended Elvis and Austin Butler's voices together, that would have been a very unique take on it. But they also had Eminem at the end.
yeah.
I didn't watch that much.
They
of
really
the
were
end.
just throwing stuff at the wall, trying to get something to stick. But I think that like in the future, the attempt to try to meld these two worlds is like a great concept. But maybe in actuality, seeing how to merge these two should be more seen as like an integration instead of just throwing one or two things and hoping that the people are happy with it, and instead of having it be a full integration instead of at bits and pieces throughout the film. Because I think it kind of took you out of it. Like I remember there, like when the songs came on, I was always like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. It kind of detracted from the film as a whole instead of adding to it, which I think that's what they were going for, but not fully successful.
I will say the one thing I did like about the music was how they would show the original artist singing it, where he stole the music from, and then they would show him singing it, and a lot of the times I was like, okay, but I kind of like the first person better. I was like, that was good too. But yeah.
I think, the storytelling in that way, like it really gave you a full understanding of like how the music came to be and how we like learned about it today, because they never would have known that where the music came from back then, especially like the technology is not, of course, what it's like today.
Yeah.
So information was just so lost in translation, which I think that we kind of forget that sometimes. We forget like what life was like without technology, and like this film did do a good job at showing what technology adds and like what it came away from. But
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know, the technology thing, I was kind of just like, at some points I was like, just do this. And you can't.
Very true.
But yeah. Okay, so what would you rate Elvis on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would do a 5 because like it was enjoyable. I would put it on if someone wanted it, but I would I'm gonna forget about this in a year.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's not worth going to see it in the theater, I don't think. I probably would have said 5.5, 6. I grew up with the music, so I do like that aspect of it, but I don't know. It could have been so much shorter. The length of it kind of annoyed me. I don't like long movies, so
yeah,
that was my big thing about it.
All right, and now we're gonna bring you to the next commercial break.
Now we're going to kick it over to Gabe and Ian for their on-the-spot review of Walk the Line.
Hey everybody, I'm Gabe.
And I'm Ian.
And today we're reviewing 2003's Walk the Line.
Let's check out the trailer.
was hit by a truck and you were lying out in that gutter dying, and you had time to sing one song. One song that would let God know what you felt about your time here on earth. One song that would sum you up. That's the kind of song that truly saves people.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
I gotta ask you how you came up with that sound. Steady like a train, sharp like a razor.
We'd play faster if we could. The taste of love is sweet.
We're all going to hell for the songs we sing.
And what about me, Charlie? Am I going to hell?
No, June, you're beautiful.
Bound by wild desire, I fell into a ring of fire.
Sorry, just happened. You should try taking credit for something every once in a while.
Come on, baby.
Baby, 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 baby.
I fell into a burning ring of fire.
Tell me you don't love me.
I don't love you.
Liar.
And the flames went higher.
Mr. Cash, why don't you refrain from performing any tunes that remind the inmates that they're in prison?
Think they forgot? The ring of fire.
Joaquin Phoenix, Reese Witherspoon.
And what's with the black?
Looks like you're going to a funeral.
Maybe I am.
Walk the line.
Go. All right, so Ian, Walk the Line. Now, before you watch this movie, you told me you didn't really listen to much Johnny Cash. You didn't really know who it is. What does Johnny Cash mean to you now that you've watched this movie?
It's come to my attention that I have heard a lot of Johnny Cash after watching this movie.
Okay.
I just don't really know.
I figured
I
as
just
much.
didn't know who he was, and I didn't realize how, like prominent he was.
Yeah, he's the father of country music.
He really is, and my dad's a big fan, so it was it was very eye-opening for me.
Now, do you want to
to
shout out your dad? Is he going to be watching this? Do you need to say something to him?
I can send this. Yeah, I'll send this to my dad. Hey, Dad, that's my shout out.
Hey, Ian's dad. It's good to see you. So, Johnny Cash, Walk the Line. I think we got to talk about the two people who were nominated. Well, one won an Oscar and one was nominated. First, Joaquin Phoenix as Mr. Johnny Cash, the Man in Black. What did you think of his performance?
I thought he gave a extremely good performance in this movie. I think he's a great actor personally, and I was even surprised with his singing voice.
Yeah.
Because when you told me last week that he sings the songs, I was like, oh man, am I gonna really sit through this whole movie and Joaquin Phoenix singing the whole time? But he's got a decent voice. It wasn't like that offensive to me to listen to.
I will say Johnny Cash luckily has his music isn't as much singing as much as it's talking. There's a lot of him that reminds me of like Bob Dylan, stuff like that, contemporaries of his age. But I think Joaquin Phoenix does an extremely good job, especially when it comes to the scenes about Johnny's alcoholism and the stuff he's going through. Joaquin Phoenix plays it really vulnerably.
He really does, and it's like uncomfortable to a point to watch, and I think it's just perfect for the film.
And I think he also just does a really, really good job of making you hate him when he's doing stupid stuff and the way he's treating people. Because Johnny Cash for a long time was a really hateable guy. He treated people really unwell. Especially his first wife, who's played by Jennifer Goodwin in this. But speaking of his wife, June Carter, played by Reese Witherspoon, she won the Oscar for Best Actress for this role. What are your thoughts on her performance?
I think she did a pretty good job. I would definitely say Joaquin did a much better job than her.
For sure.
Especially when they're scene partners, it's really hard to be like, oh yeah, I think June's really standing out in this scene because Joaquin's always gonna steal the show from her. But I think she had an amazing voice, and it was very fun to listen to her sing. And she did very help aid me in hating Johnny Cash when they were together.
Now, are you going to tell me that you didn't love it when they sang Jackson together? Because I think that's one of the best parts of the movie. But as a whole, I think the music is what makes this movie really stand out. Would you say you had a favorite song, a favorite musical set piece in this?
Oh man, it might be, I don't really know the songs. It might be the first song he performed on stage.
Okay.
At the very beginning of the tour. I thought that was a very standout song, and I was really feeling that one.
So I think obviously you can't do Johnny Cash without Ring of Fire. I think that part is excellent. But I'm gonna go, like I said, June, Johnny, they get together and they sing Jackson, and Johnny goes, "I'm not gonna keep singing this song till Miss June Carter accepts my hand in marriage." It's so beautiful, and that's based on a true story, that actually happened at a tour that Johnny Cash did. And so I think that's amazing. Now, this movie is very, let's say, transparent about the kind of person Johnny Cash was. Compared to Elvis, which the studio is talking about this week, which has definitely received some criticisms for being very flattering to a man who, at the very best, appropriated the whole of black culture. Do you prefer when a biopic is raw and vulnerable, or do you want more of like a fantastical cinema film narrated version of their lives?
Oh, I don't know. This is a really hard question because the whole time I was watching Walk the Line, I was like, because at the beginning credits, it's like based on two autobiographies by Johnny Cash, and I'm like, holy crap, did he write about this stuff and he was being like this transparent and vulnerable in his own autobiographies? That's insane. Like this is actually crazy that we see this whole like side of him like that I guess the public didn't know as well.
Yeah.
So, but I do love the spectacle of Elvis, and I do love how huge and theatrical it is, and I think that fits someone like Elvis better than it would have fit Johnny Cash.
Yeah, I think Johnny Cash called himself the man in black, not just for all black like he was wearing, but a big part of it was, you know, he felt the need to like bear himself on stage and the kind of person he was. And so I think it works both ways. And I think you as a film student, I feel like I expect like a really good biopic out of you that's flashy and vulnerable. That's what I'm saying. I'm going to give you 20 years.
Okay.
But if you haven't delivered, I'm going to be super disappointed. Now, this movie, biopics don't really work unless you can get their story of their life on screen. This movie was directed by James Mangold, who's an extremely talented director. I think his two best films are Logan and Ford vs. Ferrari. He directed the 5th Indiana Jones coming out this year. So what did you think of James Mangold's way of, you know, telling Johnny Cash's story on camera?
I think, well, something that really stood out to me, especially in the beginning, in like the childhood scenes, was the cinematography in those earlier scenes is like striking and absolutely gorgeous. Every frame in like the cotton fields could be its own photo. And I think he obviously like, no, an actor is only as good as the director is to an extent. So, like, of course, those great performances wouldn't have been found without having that great director.
Yeah. All right, so great performances, great music. 1 out of 10, what are you rating Walk the Line?
I'm going to go an 8 out of 10.
Okay. Well, I hear the whistle blowing, the train's coming around the bend, and I'm going to give this movie a 10 out of 10. I think Walk the Line is maybe the second best, third best musical biopic I've ever seen. It's honestly right up there with 8 Mile for me, and I think Johnny Cash deserves way more respect in society. We'll be right back after this. That's all for this week. If you want to follow more Review Crew content, go to the Review Crew Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, as well as Orange TV Network on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and YouTube. Find the Review Q's podcast on Spotify or on our website at orangetvnetwork.syr.edu, where you can also find our blog and more OTN information. Check out this week's screening hosted by University Union, Top Gun Maverick. We'll see you next week.